text cam in 8251 in the morning. Not a call. A text. That data bill matters because of what it tells you about the person sending it. My grandson was 14 years old and the person sending. My grandson was 14 years old and he knew too, even 8-5151 winning with his arms swaddling. And he's probably still wet. That a call would make noise. A 5 wine still wet. That a call would make noise. A text could be read under a blanket. Grandpa, I think something is broken. Don't call. Don't call the house. I was out of bed before I finished reading it. My name is Howard called the house. I was out of bed before I finished reading it. My name is Howard Cole. I'm 61 years old. I spent 26 years as a slams investigator for a major insurance carrier out of Nashville, Tennessee, which means I spent 26, which means I spent 26 years watching people tell me stories that weren't freeze that were nice to bed. When stores that when to twitted the vistavin, and dispatched and dispatched. And it stored of the film. The skill did not retried with me. My grandson's name is Tommy. He is the son of my son Marcus, and Marcus' wife Diane. And I am going to seize wife Diane. And I am going to sell you'd have what that situation that shitty with that situation was before I tell you what happened that night. Because the night ends without the context, it stands be context. Marcus marries Diane 3 years ago. I was at the wedding. I sat in the front row and I smiled because Marcus was smiling, and that is where says way because Marcus was this smiling, and that is what a father does. But I had a laddie been watching Diane for 4 months by then, and what I had seen had not made me smilly. Not on natin, not made me. Not on made me. The first time I met her was at my house. Marcus brought her to meet the family, and she arrived with a bottle of wine. And a story about traffic that had too many specific wrong to made specific wrong turns in it to be spontaneous. Within 20 minutes she had asked me, Cassidy, whether I still had contact the Cara, whether spent debts for Cara, whether I owned my house or rented, and whether I had the topped about what I wanted, and whether I fit about what I wanted with my time in retemp. I recognised every one of those questions for what they were. Inventory. Style was icy cotton for Rosses. I said nothing that night. I had nothing to point to. But I drove home and I kept what I quoted. What I knew to myself, and I started paying closer attention. Tommy was 11 when Marcus and Diane got martyr attention. Tommy was 11 when Marcus and Diane got married. He had been living with Marcus since his mother passed 3 years before that. Heart condition. She was 38. Tommy was 8. Tommy was 8 when he lost her, and Marcus was still putting himself back together when took himself back to Jetton. I understood why Marcus fell for her. He was lonely in the specific way grief makes a person lonely, which is not about being alone, but about feeling like your life has lost its shape and you will take weight of. But back. Dr. Ben gave it back. She was organized and confident, and she made everything look handled. I know what that looks like from the inside. At the time, Marcus only saw the outside. The first thing I noted about Tommy after Ding was that he bunned winning was that he stopped running to the door. When I came over, not all gradual. The way a plant stops growing when summoning in the soil changing. By November, By November of that first year, and she was meeting me in the driveway instead of the entryway, and by fairway instead of the entryway, and by fairway, and by February ferry he was waiting for me on the porch. Outside, I knotted the shirt because it was the scund week of February in Nashville and the sill, and the hard that day they was 5 of 8s were silled and Tom's back. To punty would free o just ran hot dud. He was looking at the strain hot. He was looking at the street when outfin. When he timed event, long sleeves. 41 degrees. Said hate runs hot. Looked a ball way when he said it. Consistent with ward races. Consistent with redsid frat. Not confronting. Not confronting. Watching. That was entry Newman 1. Over the next 16 months. I boiled what I built the fails from 2.5 feed filled quiz for 2.5 ped bill. Paid fills from 2.5 ped is for. Deep budge fighted sent quadvado, now interpretation. Beyond what the facts actually supported. February's the long slews, February's the non-cos aber. Pepperell was the flinch cornered Tommy reach. Tommy reached for the salt shaker at Ace Edison, Dinnet, and when Diane Fank cost the fake. The root van Dinnet, and when did, and when Diane said his name, but oct purred books there. A logged, not proof of anything. Evidence of something. June was the visit that got shortened. Marcus called in me on a Marcus called in me on a Tuesday to tell me Tommy wouldn't be staying the week with me the way he'd every sum. With need of ain the wake with me the way had every summer program. Marcus sighed it like Haid was reading a note Simone is head-wittin. I told him that was fine. I lodged the tone. Argist was the tones. Tommy and I had all stitched the tones. Tommy and I had all texted every few days. Notting heavy, sports scores. Dumb jokers. The O.C. Cazornal photograph of something one of use to the other. What find funny. Funny that some of the tummer the text changed. Scorter. I had read in hundreds of Slayment statements over the years. It is the pattern of a person composing for an agent they cannot name. In September I did 2 hens they cannot name. In September I did 2 hens. I called it my brother, Derheck. He is 4 years. You in autonomy, and he runs a small, general contracting business out of Brentwood, and he is the most naturally observant person I have ever met in my life. I had been at 3 family dinners, where Diane was present, and I asked him, directly and with perf, beramable, what he had noted. He was Kiewitz Crummet, for Ramel, what he had notic. He was Kiewitz for Kayet for a moment. Then he said, she questions that worsten detracted aid. And when Tommy talks, she watch him like she's Gwezin. Like reading evident dord. And when Tommy talks, she watches him like she watch him. Like she watch him like she's. I told him I need him to keep that to himself for now. He shied, he's understood. The second thing I did in September was give Tommy a phone. I told Marcus once on wire phone. I told Marcus it was an early birthday present. Marcus sighed. Tommy already had a phone and a side. I knew that. This was a singed one. Prepared for 4. Thin 4 on emergencies and independent. The way kids should have something that is the way. Kids should have something that is just there. Marcus took about it. At 4 acing that is just theirs. Marcus told about it, afore I singed, and sighed, okay. He did not tell Diane. I go, Tomming the fur than much on a Thursday. Just the 2 of use, at the diner on Gollatin Point when he where his mutton and of calf, where his mother and I go way to bake him when he was small. I slid it to cock him when he was small. I slid it across the table on a papa cake and I told him, this is yours. You'll never. Nobody has it shares. If you've have to use it. You'll never. Nobody as it. You never have to use it. Bew. If you ever need to reach me and your regular ferns Hans isn't attention, this is how. He looked at the phone. He looked at the phone. He did not He did not as why. He put it in the front pocket of BK pemished. Hey, you said IT 251 in the morning on a Wednesday in February, in 60 months after I kind of February, 60 months after back, which Hivvik pork, which earbook, he said. Send the Mars my champ. From Champtown. I've been here me. Offen here van, dead, is verb. Not here, was me. I put the phone in my pocket and I left. My name is Howard Cole and I spent 26 years learning to walk into a moom without a ning to walk into a moom without a knowing what I already know. You don't panic after enough earlier morning situations. You move. You asked. You work the problem in the order. The problem needs to be work. I drove to Sand, though is my town of Threden, at 14:14 on morning, and I SAT in the parking garage for Pawn Ford in the morning. And I SAT in the parking garage for Quad for car. 40 chance does not sound like much. 4 seconds is the difference between walking and as the person who controls what happens next, and walking in a sext, and walking in a sex grandfather wishes scared. I am always the former. Or mare. I have made a discipline of fair. Roga kinconums con, a visiar. Or mare a full mare. I have made a discipline of it. Roga canton, Roger is the attending. I recognize from across the nurse's station and the reason. I recognize it him is that we have kane nowny sech whom, is that we have kane nowny sech other for 9 years. I investigated a salim that involved his practice. A billing dispute that's billing set it which het was actually a steffing situation draced about his thing, situation draced up. And I spent 6 weeks quits untangling it in I feet. And I spent 6 weeks untangling it in I way that protect him and his partner from something that did not talk easy coming. Roger Canton has not forgotten that. I was counting on that ton night. He handed off the chart he was holding and walked toward me. And walked toward me. How odd. He said my name the way a person says the name of the person they have been waiting for without knowing they were waiting for anyone. Where is Hedge? What are you looking at? Held my east for one beat. Then I haven't said the mechanism yet. The boy said it was a polyten. It was a porry said. It was a fall down the stair. It was a fall down the stair. It farmage and tail. The front steered. Red. Bin pedum. The diff for current story. What kind of diff for it? Radial front stored. What chord is not parent? Radial fractor. The far sector. The stalind with fall. It is consistent with the arm being held and twisted. He paused. There is also a healed in gield injury. Ford's metacarpal for semitang kappa. Farm to end Ford to zemming carpal. End hend. Ford to tis 6 months old. Never teared. I stood still stim and 4 nans old. Never tear. I stood still for a moment. For to tuben troba. From tuba. I had an entry from Ostacoba. I had an entry from Ostacoba. I had an entry from October. Tommy, homecoming weekend, wore a brace on his right hand, said he jammed it in committed in Guayam classed. I had Whitman, possible, also possible not. Documenting. I had documented. And he had documented. And he had managed it, and he had managed it, and he had managed it Ibalan for 4 months without telling me E1, L1, A1, I 4 months, without telling me Orimoli. I put that in a place where I put things that need to wait, until afford to feel them. File the mechanism as Izamziguoza, file steered. I told Roga. ACC rate it might. I told Roga. ACCU rate and complete. Everything the eye making shows. He nodded. Already drafted. I wanted to know if family was coming before I made it permanent. Family is here, I said. He picked up the chart and walked toward his office. Tommy was in bay 7. Curtain pulled, was sitting on the exam table with his back against the wall the way kids sit when they are trying to tack to fake up as lit up as pulse. Right arm credden scrad in semen twiniver make. Right arm credden a bed against his chest. Usens on the curtain when he foul. White arm credder dear guns his quest. The sound he found on the purred breadden, when I purred it besided. The sound he bemarred was not bread fed bread. I pulled the chair, close, and sat at his level, not standing, eye to eye, not farding. My body comes to the earth, the butt comes to earth that curtain, unless I say so. So. He nodded. He had been past tears for a while. I could tell because of the specific stillness that comes after, the kind that looks calm but is it. But he is. Nodded. He had been past tears for a while. I could tell because of the specific stillness that comes after, the kind that looks calm but is it. I asked him to tell me. What happened? I listened the way I had listened to Slarrymans for 26 years, which means completely and without steering. Shix means completely and without steering. No reactions that would make him audit himself. No reactions that would make him audit himself. No expressions that would tell him what I wanted to hear. Had told me about the argument that started at dinner. Had not cleared his plate fast enough, fast, with which was the ream, but far which we saw breezem. But he said, and I had are the precision on the way here. But he said the precision of the far someone we hasted it. The precision of someone our way has to be. The precision of someone we hast it. The precision of someone. It was about the fact that his fard Tommy reminded him of his mother that afternoon, which had been a Dina Gemwine, switch had been a Caftran sard with love, and Diane hard a sard with love, and Diane hearted hard, dard it and the didn't, Dinah, goed after that. Diane's voice, controled, and very quiet in the way that is kuda to hand yenning. And then the stairs. And then Tommy holding his arm. And Tommy holding his arm in the upstairs bathroom for 40 minutes before he detected. I needed the October injury, whether there were others with marks and whether any teacher or coach had said anything to him this year. His answers took 9 minutes. I did not interrupt once. When he finished, I put my hand over his, carefully, away from the injured arm. You did. Everything right. Keeping the fern, texting instead of calling, waiting for me. That was all exactly right. He looked at me. He said, "Is Dad going to be okay?" There it was. Right there. Tommy's first question was about his father. Not a mouse first question was about his first-in. Not amount half. Not amount what. His first question was about his first. Not amount what happened next. His first question was for marks. I have count Tommy's in the day he was born, and that question, in that moment, is the thing about him, as outmant is the thing about him that has always made me ferocious in a way I do not feel about most things. I don't know yet, told him honestly. But that is not your job tonight. Tonight, your only job is to tell the truth to the people who are going to help you. Can you do that? Yes, he said, without hesitation. I squeezed his hand on't. Then I stepped outside and went to work. The first call I made was to the surge. Nurse, whose name was Apparel, and double told me she had a larity to Crury, documented two attempts by Diane to ACC the clinicaro, a rare scientific path, by Diane to ACC tumical ara. A sin, Tummy was bruffed immediately on hard. Tummy, a Piri had told her the evaluation was in progress both times. The second time Diane had raced to recent, term voice time, Diap aperius cabut ascribed, as contribut curried, but deliberate. I told Aperius contivid as consider the deliber. Apiral said, Security is already aware. The seasoned call was to Barry Omens. Barry is a licensed clinical social worker. We as consultative worker. We has consulted on childvite, prepective remitive matters in Tiverton. Counting Pole Freefen, Yev, Tiefen, and Tatidin. And Tiverton Cohen, Fern Fontinik and Teven, on Fertit and Kant. And Hayton, Hasperd on the third ring. Barry, it's Harold Cold. I'm Pate Cerned Thomas, my town with a 14 wire 14 world. Radial frashkutcher inconsistent with reported racanism. Heskanism with reported mechanism. Healed prior pre-yar in Yuri. Samaim he canned, untreated. Stemmer the present, and was done the dewilled. Father is not invading. Untreated. Stemmer the present, and was he was quiet for 1 second. 2 hours. A lella now. The third call I made from the far end of the corridor near the stairwell exit. Carol Whitmore has been my attorney, Esther. Carol Whitmore has been my attorney for 11 years. S-word on the scrum, when a voice that was more alert than I expected at 4 in the morning, which told me she'd had a lady see fighted had a lady been a walker, or cloyef, or close to sluice too. Carol. I need to file for Nemigenson, temporary guardianship of Tommy Rosen. Ship of Tomming Tromro. I have a medical report being entered right now. A social worker on his way. 16 months of document of observations or mented observations on my feasons, on my fan. Appear untreated on Jabay, and 2 witteds as it the hospital weekated already started their odi started. I know what Carol's silence sounds like when she is processing versus when she is uncertain. This was processing. Send me everything now. I love you on the way. On the way. On the way. I'm already up, she said. Give me 40 minutes. She arrived in 37. While I waited, I pulled up the notes on my phone. 43 entries going back to February of the previous years. I had written every entry the way I wrote Salam Nose, Salir Sinsum 2 for 26 years, which is the way you write hins when you know a do knows a miteds, when you know a judder doable might read them some day. You do not old, and then you write possible, also possible not. That language matters. Carol told me later it was the first thing she noted. An investigator would doesn't overstate his case readable. An investigator would doesn't overstate his readable. An investigator would Carol callies every opsa, and is deester lying or hunnet honest. 43 qualifitin tries, read as honest. When Carol arrived, I walked at her though the full-time line without gaps. She see it in the small conference rooms, the room that appear prill. Had one locked fawn, room that appear hodlon locked for wers and read the notters on her fawn while barrel. I stood outside that curtain for every single minute of the interface. Both because it because it was the right thing to do, and because I had side fon to book half me chade. So had side nobody came for off the camp to off the capat commented. That me ent it. At 30 pinyet mert Karuk look up. Howard. Entry. Twaco, you what's the Tommy's posture at the forced of jury cookout, wasn't a cookout, and I'm reading exactly. Aty Pishley cam pretty cacked for the social settin'. Diane present. No div. No div. No div. Not. the way he was to do in the years right after his mother died. I had not seen it so started to come back out of that. I saw it again, I knew Julie. She looked at me over her reading glasses. That's not clinical language, but a judge will understand it perfectly. I know, I said. That's why I wrote it that way. She went back to reading. Barry came out at 523. He walked to 2, spout of 2. He walked to Steph's. Toward Penny and wrote, me, and lowered his voice 6. His AC count is consistent and coherent, and ceasant, incessant, and coherent. In their yours. Is self-correctude 3 times drind. Hatir describes a pattern of escalating incidents, beginning approximately 8 months after the marriage. Tonit was not the first in kitten that left the first in kitten that lapped a mark. It is the first time he chid outside the household for helps. Possibly more he is not ready to name yet. He paused. He also describes a progressive restoration of his environment. Phone use monitored. School of its an environment. Phone using monitored. School of its is readut. Visits to guest and family shorten. Her time to find the onset as the summer after the wedding, when his father travelled for word, for dirt 494, work for Nye, was alone with her for the first time. Beside me Carol had set down her phone. Per time, the level of specific detail on individual incidents is consistent with experience, not fabrication. I am filing a mandatory report to Tennessee DC's tonight. Notification will be made with accuracy. C. de Harden. Notification will be made within the hard. Good, I said. A DC's investigator will be assigned by morning. The will mat to interview Tommy independently and contest a home, the sits it, a home visit. He is not going back to that home before any of that happens, Carol said. She was a laddie dial, essaying the hospital is interfering in a faring and a fally medical decision. What is her affect? Controt. The kind that requires first port. To main that requires efforts first to maintain. She has been on her fern frequent decline. She has been on her fern for a dequently send firth, to main vor. She paused. Your son Arov, about to went Imenese. They have not spoken since H down. Separate sides of the room I sees. Of the room I said. Different corners, she said. Different corners, she said more the 6 in the Nordiac 6 in the morning is in for pension. Document every reach catchment, every stead. Tolgament every reach she makes. If Rintema 7, every free quest she makes. I told Imperial. Exact loan. Timestamp. Everything go ins timest. Everything go ins the record. Already does, she said, and went back to her station. 87,010. 2 officers from Metro Nashville PD arrived in responding to response to Barrett's Z-pool, which tage notification, which had triggered on Nautic, Larry 4 from Escherel, under Tennessee State Protariga and for Forsum referral under Tennessee State, protocol clues of a minoring. Amat Officer Stacy poured in the corridor before she reached the waiting area. Late fawn ties. Thorthuff. The kind of officer of the corned, in a tind of officer which double reads down everything and asks questions in a sins that tells you she has done this before and has a systems that tells you she has done this before and has a system. I gave her my background and a clean summary of the times of the timing of the more the of the re of the also prate should be built bickriden. 16 months of duacrits vangamenta ravens of Raxon. Tonights in months of duaction, tonitidge, pegaxon. Tonights in Gia, finded. I gave her the information cleanly because an gay spiria so the easier you make it for law the nor enforcement to do that their childbit, the better, the bit, for better but better fic. She held my eyes for a moment. Most family members come to use with a feeling and a feel memories. You came with a timeless. Yous came with a timeline. 26 years as them as investigator, I said. Some habits don't retrain when you do. She noted don't see. Speckwits don't return when you do. She noted don't see. Dwell. Need to spec with your grandson. My attorney is here. See. Will coordinate with you. Tommy has already spoken with a social worker and is prepared to ski work in his sea, with you on the condition that a can't receive remain accessible. Just right. Standard procedure, she said. Standard procedure, she said. I lard, 8735. I did the same thing I had been putting off since in depart the car. I called Tommy's school. Coach Devlin's is peeling, is the assistant in football. Coach sports school Quebec Tamming is the assist Pete football. Quebec Tommy's is Pimmy's Pammers. I had his number because Tommy gave it to me last fall after Devlin had called a man's had called the fool. After Sev that Tommy was whatever kids. He had ever work what from his ball called. Kids he had ever work. This Howard Cole, Tommy's grandfather. I need to talk to you about Tommy and you about Tommy, and I need you to still wet hither and here. You have not it anything about him. About him, that ever doubt. Not him, this season. The pause, not hesitation. The pause of a person, touted how much to say. How much tation. The pause of a purse, idding how much to say. How much to have michtigen. How much to say. Iddy chai. Mr. Cole, as much you need. What Devlin told me over the next 20 minutes close gaps. I hadn't been able to disclose from the outside. Fine, Ugneighbor. Tommy had comes to prasted with his hand wapped. Comet Ublin told Devlin it hadlin quapped, and told Devlin it hadlin hejambid. Devlin had noted that the rap was not a sports. Rap it a boy is. The kind of rap it is a heb whip you do yourself a home when you don't know when he stone want he look stolosely. He had asked Tommy about it on heb and Tony could desound. Tommy had shut down in a way that lean desperate beaters not like him. He had noted in his coaching log, because he's not anything that affected a player's facet, a player's ficted fresical status. In December, Tommy had missed 3 practices phonoing a family exfasis, phonoing a family. Devlin had seen Tommy 2 days before the Aversons and he had been fine. He had flagged it internally. He had not escalated it because he did not yet have enough, and in January, during a film session after practice, Devlin had walked in and found Tommy sitting a limbing down the tombing alone in the dart in the team room not mottoing anything. When Devlin asked if Rika's okay, Tommy had if he was okay if Rika's okay. Tommy had said yes in the specific way. That means no but coin to say sard. Devlin had SAT with him for 20 minutes with within pushing. Headed not what. Pushing tated during toast 24's 20 minutes because the fiend fund immediate because Tommy had not said my had much said much. He did not that Tommy stayed much said my had much. He did not that Tommy stayed until Devlin tilled in Liflin. Cage did that. Tommy, that feminine theft of everything statement, not your impressions. What you observed, what you document, and when. Can you have something into my attend when a fortress morifing to my attorney by 8:30? I can have it by 8:30. I can have it by 8, he said. Mr. Cole. Is he going to be okay? He said. Mr. Cole. Is he going to be okay? He is. I said. And this time when I said it meant the present, to not the future. 8817 Carol received word from the Davidson song Cowling Family Court, declared the big emergency guardianship petition had been received and was under received and was under receipt right and the mive and risit and pair for the receipt. TAT 8 Court C8 Devlin Staterman Fadden Staterman Thudderbud a rivet in Carol's specific observations. The Osti Kober hand wap, the Dickenber Aversonses, The January film room. Carol read it on 5 miniatures. Made 3 notes, made 3 no's a pad. Look up pad. Lookup's combined with everything else's. She said sud. In 11 years, your head's cardinal. Spick up combined with everything else, she said sweet. Paused to Turrell say 3 words exactly twice to poise today. Both times wise. How long? I asked. Judd Price takes emergency petitions personally. Her Kleseg Seb C is in her office by 8 hurt for. Care Hall checked her wife. Care Hall check her white. Care Hall roll. Checked her wash. Lestanan horde. I went back to Bay 7. Tommy was off. He had been off for a while. He had the hospital blanket pulled around his shoulders, and he was looking at the ceiling the way that have a gimming, the seeing the way the people look at the seeing when they are not seeking it. He looked at me when I saying it. He looked at me when I came in. And have you been out there? This que'd been out there. Forder, Tom coming, when this moves forward, and it will forward. There may come a point where someone asks you to speaking on kind. A courtroom. You don't have to decide that right now. But I want you to know have to decide that right now. But I want you to know it is your choice. Not mine. Not your dad's. Yours. He thought about it. Would it matter? Not your dad's. What you saw, combined with everything I've seen and have, would matter a great deal. He looked at the wall for a moment. Then, I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking, I said. Carol called it 920 I said. Carol called it 904. I was standing at the vending machine at the far end of the wing, staring at a selection of items that did not include anything I wanted. The judge signed it. Carol said. 2 words. Emergencies, Carol said. 2 words. Emergensance temporary guardianship. 60 days effective of 858. This morning, you are Tommy's legal guardian effected now. DI has been served with a no contents, Arthur, and no conscience order. Marcus has been notified as a identified as a conjury party. He reaches Breen's parental right. He reaches Breen's parental rights. All petitions regarding Tommy welfare during ship Perian. I set down the vending machine, Sophie. I had not intended to buy. Carol. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. 60 days moves fast and 2020 needed to build the permanent case whilst and well of Nihida build the permanent case whilst we have the permanent case whilst we have the time. This space, it does not finish the work. A note first. Tell your grandson, she said. What first? Tell your grandson, she said. What first? Tell your grandson everything. Else he can wait 10 minutes. I pulled the curtain back cutingly. Tommy was sitting up straighter. Tommy was sitting up straighter than had been. Something had Streve had been. Something had shifted in the last herd, than Waith hens shifted in the last herd rind awaith. And has Ben Besson is minfing vidding for it, and has rifted an asthmat. And he looked at me. I sat down in the chair, and I told him directly, the way I told him everything, because Tommy had a rething, because Tommy had a near directness, and I have never believed that private that protecting people from information exceed reproach them from ente putrum. In think, you are coming home with me. Diane cannot contact you. That is not a plan. That is a legal fact. He stared at me. Like right now. Right now. Something moved across his face. Several things in sequence, the way a person processes news they need to hear, and had almost stopped letting the summation. Then he was quiet for a moment, and he looked at his splintered hand. Can we stop for food on the way? The crackers they gave me were stale. I looked at him for one beat. I know a place on Charter Tivemin, the Romans 4. The butching debt opens at 7, I said. You can get whatever you want, for the first time since. I had pulled back that curtain pout in the morning. He smiled. Tired. Mind. Tired. Mild. The Annie was gone. Officer Prout told me she had left Voltaire lefty voluntarily after being present with the guardianship order and the no-contact provision. Left without insigish provided, had noted wit note quit, for noted wit not with the expression of someone we had expected more. Marcus looked like a man, W7 in sitting inside, a realization for several hours and had not found the way out of here. He looked up when I walked out of it. He looked up when I walked at him. I sat across from him, not beside. I told him about the 43 tries going back to February. I told him about the prior untreated fascature. I told him about Devlin's knots and the Osterkober hand warp, Knopf and the Janus knots and the Susterkober hand worm. I did not tell him the specific things Tommy had described. It was Tommy's AC's account to share in Tommy's own time. It was not mine. It was not mine, Sifist. He did not look away, but when I finished, he was called for het for Omentine. Then he said he was called for het for a knife undiced. Bid was cooed vot for a long time. Then he said he was cooed for het. There are thens I could see it there cooed. There are tens I could have said that. You can see it now, I said. That potion is still in front of you. He looked at his hands. Is he going to be okay? He already asked about breakfast, I said. When you are ready to talk, I said. Not before, but when you are. I left him there with the card and what he was working toward. The foof. I could not do that working tuition. The man has before grief made him easy to reach. The iron was charged 11 days later. 2 counters of felony shield of Bozix causing bodily injury, abuse causing bodily injury. 1 count of domestic assault, the note that the pattern of documentation, combined with the medical evidence of the prior untreated fracture, moved the case from misdemeanor to felony classis efficacious, from misdemeanor to felony classification. The prior injury demanded not in 88 month for it at all. SHE had not planned for the 43 entries. She had not planned for the prior fracture showing up on the beginning. She had not planned for the fracture showing up on the beginning. She had not planned for the coach with the dated notes. She had not planned for me, for Miss Ford. Months after that text A251 on the morning, I am sitting on my back porch on a porch on a Thursday afternoon when with a fee by aptly like when I hear tupultly like when I hear Tommy in the backyard arguing with the backyard arguing quivering with his friend about some friend a video game they are playing too the video game, and the argument is lewd and completely without self-consciousness. It is not the careful neutral voice from the text. It is not the voice it's from the text. It is not the voice he used when Diane was in the room. The clipped monitored language in ignorance I had catalogued in entries 14 through 22. It is the other voice, the one that does not review itself before it comes out. I keep writing what I am writing. But I mark the moment. There is one thing I have not said, Alan fed. I have not said Alan loved it and I want it and I want to save it now. I gave Tommy the phone in Shempermer. A 13 I gave him the phone in September. 7 months between when I knew something was wrong and when I gave him a woe out. 7 months I cannot read him a way out. 7 months I cannot return to him. The Potoba fracture happened in 9 window. He mainowed it alone for 4 to 6 months, happed his own hand and went to football practice and told his coach hand told his coach hand jammed it. He was 13 years old. I carried that, not as punishment, as a fact that belonged close to me and that I punish him, as a fact that belonged to me and that I owe it to him not to look away from. It is the fact that makes me, from here forward, the person we taxed on what he can ours before he is completely curtain. Because waiting for sexton. Because waiting for sextonty is a luxury that has a cost, and the cost is paid by someone. Else is paid by someone. Texted me at 2:51 in the morning because he had affirmed the work and he believed for that affirmed, and he believed that had if he reached that affirm, he believe I would be there. If you are watching this and something has been registered at the edge of your case dimension, a change in behavior, a change in fire, a covered bruises, a story that has testimony data, start writing it down, date it, be exact. Trust the 26 years or the 40 sieves or the 40 years all ahead of a number of youths your life, as your life has given you of knowing when something is wrong. The people we need you are not aiming for you. That is the WO of it. I have thought about this a lot since that night. Not the hospital part, not the courtroom part. The 7 months before any of that. Because here is the thing about cause and effect that nobody tells you when you are living inside a situation. The consequences do not announce themselves in advance. They accumulate quietly. Diane did not wake up one morning and decide to hurt Tommy once and face a felony charge. She made a series of small decisions over a long period of time, each one slightly further than the last, each one enabled by the fact that nobody was counting. I was counting, and what I have come to understand is that the counting itself changed the outcome. Not my 26 years of experience, not my contacts or my attorney or the dashcam footage. The counting. The discipline of writing down what I saw, on the date I saw it, without editorializing, and trusting that the record would matter before I knew exactly how. That is what I mean when I talk about intelligence as a practice and not a gift. I was not born knowing how to document. I learned it over decades by watching what happened to cases where the documentation was careless and what happened to cases where it was not. Tommy did not benefit from my talent. He benefited from my accumulated habit. Those are different things. A talent is something you have. A habit is something you built, which means it was once a choice, which means anyone can build it. And that matters to me because I am not a special case. I am a 61-year-old retired claims investigator from Nashville who woke up to a text at 2:51 in the morning and drove to a hospital. What I brought with me was not exceptional. It was prepared. Preparation is the thing that looks like luck from the outside and is actually just the long result of paying attention when paying attention is inconvenient. The harder part to talk about is Marcus. My son is not a villain in this story. He is a man who was still grieving, who let his grief make him easy to influence, and who made a series of choices about what to see and what not to see. I understand every one of those choices. I do not excuse them. There is a difference between understanding why a person failed and releasing them from the responsibility of the failure. Marcus has to do that work himself. I put my card on that table and I left. What he does with it is his. What I know is this. Tommy is in my backyard arguing about a video game in his real voice. The voice without an audience. The one that existed before he learned to monitor himself around someone who required it. That voice is not a small thing. That voice is the whole point. The people in our lives who are being quietly diminished rarely announce it directly. They cover it. They make it smaller. They wrap their own hand and go to practice and say they jammed it. They wait at the porch instead of the door and tell you they just run hot. They learn to exist inside a smaller and smaller space. And they do it so gradually that by the time you notice, they have almost forgotten there was ever more room. Watch for the shrinking. That is what I would tell anyone who asks me what I actually learned from all of this, not the documentation system, not the network of contacts. Watch for the shrinking, Because the moment someone you love starts making themselves smaller, the clock has already started. I showed up because I was watching. That is the only reason any of the rest of it was possible.